The golden eyes of the wild bobcat locked onto Maya's with an intensity that defied every natural law, her powerful body trembling not with predatory rage, but with a dog-like joy that stunned everyone in the observation room. When Luna released that first chirping cry, a sound no wildlife expert had ever documented in 20 years of bobcat research, Maya felt her professional walls crumble as tears streamed down her face. Realizing this wild predator had done the impossible, she had waited, grieved, and now wept at her human's return. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment where in the world you're watching from. Let's go. The crack of a branch echoed through the early morning stillness of the Colorado wilderness, causing wildlife rehabilitator Maya Collins to freeze mid-step. 20 yards ahead, the injured bobcat kitten she'd been tracking for 3 days had finally emerged from the dense underbrush. The tiny creature limped painfully across a small clearing, dragging its hind leg at an unnatural angle. Maya's heart ached at the sight, but she remained motionless, knowing that any sudden movement might send the frightened animal bolting back into the impenetrable thicket. "Easy now," she whispered, more to steady herself than to calm the bobcat. At just 4 months old, the kitten should have been with its mother, learning to hunt and developing the instincts that would carry it through a life in the wild. Instead, it was alone, injured, and growing weaker by the day. Maya had received the first call about the bobcat kitten a week earlier. A hiker had spotted it near a popular trail, noticeably injured and seemingly abandoned. When wildlife officials confirmed no adult female bobcat remained in the area, Maya's team at the Colorado Wildlife Rehabilitation Center mobilized. Finding the kitten before predators or starvation claimed its life had become their mission. Now, after days of searching, setting humane traps baited with fresh rabbit meat and following the faintest of trails, Maya was finally close enough to attempt a rescue. Slowly, she raised the tranquilizer gun to her shoulder, her experienced hands steady despite the surge of adrenaline coursing through her body. "Just a little closer," she urged silently, as the kitten paused to sniff at something in the grass. The morning light caught its spotted coat, highlighting the rich tawny fur and distinctive black markings that would one day make it a master of camouflage in these forests. If it survived. Maya's finger tensed on the trigger. The dart flew true, striking the kitten in its flank. The tiny cat spun with surprising speed, hissing and swiping at the unexpected sting before the drug took effect. Within seconds, the bobcat's movements slowed, its small body swaying before collapsing gently onto the forest floor. Maya counted to 60 before approaching, her boots crunching on the frost-covered ground. Even sedated, wild predators could be unpredictable. But as she knelt beside the small form, she could see the bobcat was completely unconscious, its chest rising and falling in the shallow rhythm of drug-induced sleep. "Got you," she murmured, quickly examining the injured leg. The break was worse than she'd feared, an open fracture with signs of infection already setting in. With practiced movements, she wrapped the kitten in a thermal blanket and placed it in the specialized carrier she'd brought. Within minutes, she was hiking back toward the trailhead, where her colleague, Dr. James Winters, waited with their mobile veterinary unit. "How bad?" James asked as Maya emerged from the tree line, the carrier held carefully in front of her. "Bad enough," she replied grimly. "Open fracture, infected, and she's severely dehydrated. 4 months old, maybe 5. Female." James nodded, immediately switching into professional mode as they transferred the sedated bobcat to the examination table in the back of their modified van. His hands moved with quick precision as he started an IV line for fluids and antibiotics. "The leg?" Maya asked, already knowing the answer from the grim set of his mouth. "We'll try to save it, but..." He left the sentence unfinished. They both knew that for a wild predator, a permanent disability could be a death sentence. If the leg couldn't be saved, difficult decisions would need to be made. The drive back to the rehabilitation center took just over an hour, the Bobcat kitten remaining sedated throughout. Maya spent the time on the phone, organizing the surgical team that would be waiting for them and updating the center's director on their new patient. "We'll call her Luna," she told James as they pulled through the gates of the Colorado Wildlife Rehabilitation Center. The sprawling facility, nestled at the foothills of the Rockies, had been Maya's home and workplace for the past 8 years. At 32, she had already established herself as one of the foremost Bobcat rehabilitation specialists in the western United States. "Luna, huh?" James glanced at her with a raised eyebrow. "Getting attached already?" Maya shook her head. "Just easier than saying the Bobcat in Surgical Suite 2 for the next few weeks." James knew better than to pursue the point. They both understood the unwritten rule of wildlife rehabilitation. Emotional distance was necessary. These weren't pets to be named and loved. They were wild creatures to be healed and returned to their natural lives. Still, in 8 years of working together, he'd never known Maya to name an animal so quickly. The surgery lasted 4 hours. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the center's top orthopedic specialist, fought to save the shattered leg, piecing together bone fragments and setting pins that would hopefully allow proper healing. Maya assisted throughout, her focus unwavering despite the exhaustion of the past days weighing on her. "It's going to be a long recovery," Elena said as they watched Luna being moved to a recovery enclosure, the tiny Bobcat now sporting a cast and various monitoring devices. 8 weeks minimum before we know if she'll regain full function. If not, "I know," Maya said quietly. "One step at a time." That night, Maya slept on a cot in the monitoring room adjacent to Luna's enclosure, waking every hour to check on the kitten's vital signs. By morning, Luna was showing signs of waking from the anesthesia, her instincts immediately triggering fear and aggression toward the strange environment and humans nearby. "That's it," Maya encouraged as Luna tried to hiss weakly at her through the viewing window. "Be fierce. You're going to need that spirit." Over the next 2 weeks, Luna's physical condition improved steadily. The infection responded to the antibiotics and the surgical site began to heal cleanly. But it was her behavior that increasingly fascinated the rehabilitation staff. Unlike most wild bobcats in captivity, who remained aloof and aggressive toward humans, Luna showed unusual responses to her caretakers. The first hint came when Maya entered the enclosure to leave fresh food and water. Instead of retreating to the farthest corner or displaying threat behaviors, Luna watched her with intense curiosity. By the 3rd week, the Bobcat would actually approach the edge of her enclosure when Maya arrived, making a distinctive chirping sound that was more commonly directed toward Bobcat kittens by their mothers. "She's imprinting on you," James warned as they observed Luna from the monitoring room. "That's the last thing we want if we're planning to release her." Maya frowned. "I'm being careful. Minimal contact, no direct interaction. She shouldn't be forming attachments." Yet the behavior continued and evolved. Luna began to respond to routine care in ways that reminded Maya of the domesticated animals she'd known growing up, the way she would present her injured leg for examination, how she would chirp in greeting when Maya entered the room, even the playful batting at enrichment toys that looked remarkably like a house cat playing with a toy mouse. "I've never seen anything like it," Maya admitted to Elena during Luna's 6-week checkup. "It's like she's caught between wild and domestic behavior patterns." Elena nodded thoughtfully as she examined the healing leg. "The break is mending well, but there's something else we need to discuss." She pointed to Luna's chart. "Based on further testing, we've determined she's closer to 6 or 7 months old, not 4 as we initially thought." "That can't be right," Maya objected. "She's far too small for that age." "That's exactly the point," Elena explained. "We think she may have been orphaned much earlier than we realized, possibly at just a few weeks old. She survived somehow, but without her mother's teaching during critical developmental periods. She never fully learned how to be a wild bobcat. Maya finished, the implications dawning on her, and now she's creating behavior patterns based on her interactions with us. The revelation about Luna's developmental issues sparked intense debate among the rehabilitation center's staff. A team meeting was called to discuss her future, with opinions divided on whether she could ever be successfully released back into the wild. The behavioral patterns she's exhibiting suggest she missed critical learning periods, Dr. Rodriguez explained to the assembled group, pointing to video footage of Luna following Maya around her enclosure. Wild bobcats develop hunting skills, territorial behaviors, and appropriate fear responses during the first 6 months with their mothers. Luna was orphaned far too young. James leaned forward, his brow furrowed with concern. So what are you suggesting, that she's unreleasable? The word hung heavy in the air. Unreleasable. In wildlife rehabilitation, it was often tantamount to a death sentence. Predators that couldn't survive in the wild had limited options: permanent captivity in education programs or wildlife sanctuaries, both of which had extremely limited space. Not necessarily, Maya interjected, her voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. We've had success with orphaned bobcats before. We can implement specialized training protocols, minimize human interaction, introduce hunting simulations. Most of those cases involved kittens that had at least some time with their mothers, Elena countered gently. Luna is different. Look at this. She played another video clip, this one showing Luna's reaction when Maya entered her enclosure. The bobcat's behavior was shocking in its domesticity. She bounded toward Maya like an excited puppy, making chirping sounds and rubbing against her legs. That's not normal bobcat behavior, Elena continued. She's displaying canine-like social patterns. Dogs have been selectively bred for thousands of years to form attachments to humans. Bobcats haven't. So how is this happening? Asked Tom Wilson, the center's director. Is it just because Maya rescued her? Elena shook her head. We think it's more complex than that. Luna was in a critical developmental period when she was orphaned. Without her mother to model appropriate bobcat behavior, she's creating her own behavioral patterns based on what's available to her. And right now, that's us. Specifically, Maya. All eyes turned to Maya, who maintained her professional composure despite the growing sense that Luna's future, perhaps her very life, hung in the balance of this discussion. I propose a specialized rehabilitation protocol, Maya said firmly. We'll need to modify her enclosure to minimize human visual contact. All feedings will be done remotely. We'll implement intensive hunting simulation training and gradually introduce natural fear responses to human presence. Tom looked skeptical. And you think that can overcome what appears to be months of developmental adaptation? I don't know, Maya admitted, but Luna deserves a chance. After lengthy discussion, a compromise was reached. Luna would be given 6 months of specialized rehabilitation under Maya's supervision. If at that point she still displayed inappropriate attachment to humans or lacked critical survival skills, her case would be reassessed for potential placement in a permanent educational facility. We need to be realistic about her prospects, Tom warned as the meeting concluded. And Maya, you need to prepare yourself for the possibility that this won't work. Maya nodded, her face betraying none of the determination she felt. She'd spent her career fighting for animals that others had given up on. Luna wouldn't be the first challenging case she'd faced, but something about the little bobcat's trust in her made this feel different, more personal. The modified rehabilitation plan began immediately. Luna's enclosure was redesigned with privacy screens that prevented her from seeing human caretakers. A sophisticated remote feeding system was installed, allowing prey items to be delivered without human presence. Specialized training equipment, moving prey simulators, environmental enrichment that encouraged natural stalking and pouncing behaviors was introduced. For the first week, Luna's reaction was heartbreaking. She paced anxiously at the edges of her enclosure, making the chirping calls that had become her signature greeting whenever she sensed human presence nearby. The rehabilitation staff monitored her via hidden cameras, documenting her behavior and adjusting the protocols accordingly. "She's looking for you," James told Maya one evening as they reviewed the day's footage. "She doesn't understand why you've disappeared." Maya watched the screen, her chest tight with conflicting emotions. "It's necessary," she replied, more to convince herself than James. "We're doing what's best for her." By the third week, Luna's behavior began to shift. The frantic searching decreased as she gradually adapted to her new environment. She started engaging more with the hunting simulators, her natural predatory instincts emerging as she practiced stalking and pouncing on the moving targets. "That's it," Maya encouraged from behind the one-way observation window. "Remember who you are." But despite these promising signs, Luna's recovery wasn't proceeding as quickly as they'd hoped. The injured leg, though healing, still caused her to favor it heavily when moving. The weakness compromised her ability to execute the powerful, explosive movements that wild bobcats relied on for hunting. "She's going to need additional physical therapy," Elena advised after examining new x-rays at the 3-month mark. "The bone has healed, but the muscle atrophy is significant. In the wild, she'd be at a severe disadvantage." This news necessitated a modification to the rehabilitation plan. Physical therapy would require direct human interaction, something they'd been carefully avoiding. After much discussion, they decided that Maya would conduct the therapy sessions using protective equipment and scent masking protocols to minimize Luna's association between the therapy and human presence. The first session was tense. Luna had not seen Maya for over 3 months, and no one knew how she would react. Dressed in specialized gear that altered her silhouette and masked her human scent, Maya entered the treatment area where Luna had been temporarily relocated. The bobcat froze, her golden eyes fixed on the strange figure before her. For a long moment, neither moved. Then Luna's nose twitched as she tested the air, and despite all their precautions, something sparked in her expression. A flicker of recognition. She chirped, that same distinctive greeting, and bounded toward Maya with unmistakable joy. "Damn it," Maya whispered, her heart sinking even as she found herself responding to Luna's obvious delight at seeing her again. "This isn't what we wanted." The physical therapy proceeded, with Maya guiding Luna through exercises designed to strengthen the weakened leg muscles. Throughout the session, Luna remained attentive and cooperative in a way that was unprecedented for a wild bobcat. She allowed Maya to manipulate the injured leg, followed basic commands for movement, and showed none of the stress or aggression that would be expected from a wild predator in such close human contact. "It's remarkable," James observed from the monitoring room. "She's responding like a trained dog." "That's exactly the problem," Maya replied once she'd exited the treatment area. "She should be trying to take my face off, not waiting for a treat and a pat on the head." The physical therapy sessions continued 3 times a week, each one revealing more of Luna's unusual behavioral adaptations. She began anticipating the exercises, performing movements before Maya directed her to. She developed what could only be described as a play bow, a behavior typically seen in canines, not felines, when she wanted Maya to engage with her. Most concerning of all, she showed absolutely no progress in developing the fear response to humans that would be essential for her survival in the wild. "She's imprinted completely," Elena concluded after reviewing 6 weeks of therapy session footage. "And not just on humans generally. On you specifically, Maya. She's bonded to you like a dog to its owner." The words hit Maya like a physical blow. After 4 months of intensive rehabilitation efforts, They were facing the possibility that Luna might never be releasable. Worse still, Maya knew that her own actions, her rescue, her care, her presence, had inadvertently created this situation. "What does this mean for her?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. Elena's expression was sympathetic but realistic. "We need to start looking at permanent placement options, educational programs, wildlife sanctuaries, somewhere that can accommodate her unique behavioral profile." Maya nodded, professional mask firmly in place. But that night, alone in her cabin on the rehabilitation center grounds, she allowed herself to feel the full weight of the situation. Luna trusted her completely, and that trust might have cost the Bobcat her chance at freedom. The search for a permanent placement for Luna proved far more difficult than anyone had anticipated. Wildlife sanctuaries across the country were already at capacity, many of them struggling with reduced funding and increased demands. Educational programs had specific requirements for ambassador animals: temperament, adaptability to travel, and response to diverse audiences. Luna's unusual behavioral profile made her case particularly complex. "She's too bonded to humans, specifically to you, for a traditional sanctuary setting," Tom explained to Maya as they reviewed another rejection email. "But she's still fundamentally a wild bobcat with natural predatory instincts. That makes her inappropriate for most educational outreach programs." 5 months had passed since Luna's rescue, and her physical recovery had exceeded all expectations. The once shattered leg had healed completely, and the intensive physical therapy had restored nearly all of its former strength and flexibility. Only the faintest limp remained, noticeable primarily when she was tired or stressed. In that respect, the rehabilitation had been a remarkable success. But behaviorally, Luna remained caught between worlds, neither fully wild nor truly domesticated. Her responses to Maya had only intensified during the therapy sessions, developing into a complex relationship that baffled even experienced wildlife experts. "It's unprecedented," remarked Dr. Gabriela Santos, a visiting ethologist who specialized in predator behavior. She had traveled from the University of Michigan specifically to observe Luna after hearing about her unusual case. "I've studied bobcats for 20 years and never seen anything like this level of interspecies bonding." Maya stood with Dr. Santos at the observation window, watching as Luna systematically explored the enrichment items that had been placed in her enclosure. The bobcat moved with the fluid grace characteristic of her species, powerful shoulders rippling beneath her spotted coat as she investigated a puzzle box containing a scent lure. "She's displaying typical predatory sequence behaviors," Dr. Santos noted, pointing as Luna crouched into a perfect hunting position before pouncing on the box. "Her instincts are intact. The issue isn't that she doesn't know how to be a bobcat, it's that she's overlaid those instincts with canine-like social behaviors." "Can that be modified?" Maya asked, hope creeping into her voice despite her efforts to remain clinically detached. "If we had more time." Dr. Santos's expression was sympathetic but realistic. The neurological pathways that form during those critical developmental periods are exceptionally difficult to rewire. Luna has essentially created her own unique behavioral framework, part bobcat, part domestic dog, and part something else entirely. The something else was what most fascinated and concerned the rehabilitation team. Luna had begun displaying behaviors that seemed almost calculated, problem-solving approaches that went beyond instinct or training. She watched and learned, adapting her responses based on observed outcomes in ways that suggested a level of social cognition rarely documented in wild felines. During one remarkable session, Luna had observed Maya struggling to undo a stuck latch on a feeding station. The next day, when faced with a similar mechanism in an enrichment puzzle, Luna approached it using the exact technique she had seen Maya employ, rather than the trial-and-error method typical of feline problem-solving. "She's modeling her behavior on you," Dr. Santos explained. "It's similar to how wolf pups learn from pack members, but it's being directed cross-species. Evolutionarily speaking, it's extraordinary." Extraordinary, but problematic for a wild animal intended for release. The 6-month reassessment deadline was approaching rapidly, and despite all their efforts, Luna showed no signs of developing the wariness toward humans that would be essential for her survival in the wild. "We need to make a decision," Tom announced during the weekly staff meeting. "Luna's case has gone well beyond our standard protocols. The board is asking questions about resource allocation, and frankly, we're running out of options for placement." The unspoken alternative hung heavy in the air. For predators that couldn't be released or placed, euthanasia was sometimes considered the most humane option, better than a life of psychological distress in inappropriate captive conditions. "Give me 2 more weeks," Maya requested, her voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. "I have one more possibility to explore." That possibility came in the form of Wildridge Sanctuary, a newly established facility in Montana specializing in predators with unique needs. Founded by a former zookeeper with family wealth, Wildridge had built a reputation for innovative approaches to animals that didn't fit conventional categories. "They're willing to consider Luna," Maya told James as they drove to a nearby town for supplies. "But they want to send their behavioral specialist to evaluate her first." James glanced at her, noting the tension in her posture. "That's good news, right? Why do you look like someone just scheduled your execution?" Maya sighed, keeping her eyes on the winding mountain road. "Because if Wildridge rejects her too, I'm out of ideas. And because—" She hesitated, finally voicing the thought that had been growing in her mind for weeks. "Part of me doesn't want to let her go." James was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was gentle but firm. "Maya, you know that's not an option. We're not in the business of keeping wild animals as pets." "I know that," she snapped, then immediately regretted her tone. "I'm sorry, I know, it's just... Luna's different. She's formed this connection, and severing it feels cruel somehow." More cruel than denying her a chance at appropriate care in a facility designed for her needs? Maya had no answer for that. The Wildridge representative, Dr. Alexis Chen, arrived 3 days later. She was younger than Maya had expected, perhaps in her early 30s, with a quiet confidence that immediately put the rehabilitation team at ease. "I've reviewed all the documentation you sent," she told them after the initial introductions. "Luna's case is exactly the kind of situation Wildridge was created to address. We currently have 2 other bobcats with atypical socialization patterns, though neither quite as extreme as what you've described." Hope flickered in Maya's chest as Dr. Chen prepared to meet Luna. Perhaps this would be the answer they'd been searching for, a place where Luna could thrive despite her unusual behavioral adaptations. The evaluation was thorough and methodical. Dr. Chen observed Luna from behind the one-way glass, taking detailed notes on her movements, vocalizations, and responses to various stimuli. She reviewed hours of footage showing Luna's interactions with Maya and other staff members. She examined medical records, rehabilitation protocols, and behavioral assessments. On the final day, she requested something unexpected: to observe Luna and Maya together in the same space, with no barriers between them. "We need to understand the full extent of the bond," she explained when Tom expressed concern about the safety implications. "If Luna is going to come to Wildridge, we need to know exactly what we're working with." The interaction session was scheduled for the following morning. Maya spent a restless night, her thoughts churning with conflicting emotions. Professional ethics demanded that she focus solely on Luna's best interests, setting aside her personal attachment. But the knowledge that this might be their final close interaction made objectivity nearly impossible. The session itself was both beautiful and heartbreaking. The moment Maya entered Luna's enclosure, The bobcat bounded toward her with unmistakable joy, making the chirping sound that had become her signature greeting. She circled Maya's legs, rubbing against her in a manner more typical of a domestic cat than a wild bobcat, then dropped into a perfect play bow, front legs extended, rear end raised, tail twitching with excitement. Maya couldn't help but respond, kneeling to let Luna approach her more closely. The bobcat pressed her head against Maya's hand, seeking contact in a way that defied all natural behaviors for her species. "This is remarkable," Dr. Chen murmured from the observation area. "She's displaying multiple cross-species social behaviors, canine play signals, feline greeting rituals, and primate-like eye contact patterns." For an hour, Maya and Luna interacted in a dance of mutual understanding that transcended conventional human-animal relationships. Luna retrieved objects when Maya pointed to them, responded to verbal cues with appropriate behaviors, and showed a level of attunement to Maya's emotional state that seemed almost supernatural. When the session ended and Maya prepared to leave, Luna's behavior changed dramatically. She paced anxiously at the door, making distress vocalizations that tore at Maya's heart. "She knows something's different," Maya explained to Dr. Chen as they watched Luna's continued agitation on the monitoring screen. "She can sense that things are changing." Dr. Chen nodded thoughtfully, her expression unreadable as she made final notes in her evaluation file. "I'll have my decision for you tomorrow," she said. The rehabilitation center's conference room was unnaturally quiet as Dr. Chen prepared to deliver her assessment. Maya sat rigidly in her chair, hands clasped tightly in her lap to prevent them from trembling. Around the table, the rest of the team maintained professional expressions, though the tension was palpable. "First, I want to thank you all for your transparency throughout this evaluation process," Dr. Chen began, her voice measured and calm. "The work you've done with Luna represents rehabilitation efforts of the highest standard, even if the outcome isn't what you initially hoped for." Maya's heart sank at those words. "Even if the outcome isn't what you hoped for." It sounded like the prelude to rejection. "Luna's case presents unique challenges," Dr. Chen continued, opening a folder containing her notes. "She displays a level of interspecies bonding rarely documented in wild felids. Her attachment to Maya specifically goes beyond simple imprinting. She's developed a complex social relationship that incorporates elements of multiple species' behavior patterns." Tom leaned forward slightly. "And your conclusion?" Dr. Chen met his gaze steadily. "Wildridge Sanctuary is prepared to accept Luna, with conditions." The relief that flooded through Maya was so intense, she momentarily closed her eyes, missing the cautious glances exchanged by her colleagues. "What conditions?" James asked, his tone wary. Dr. Chen turned a page in her notes. "Luna's unusual behavioral profile requires specialized care. Our standard protocols won't be sufficient." She looked directly at Maya now. "We believe that for her transition to be successful, she'll need the continued presence of her primary bonded human during the adjustment period." A confused silence fell over the room as the implications of this statement sank in. "Are you saying—" Maya began, hardly daring to hope she understood correctly. "I'm offering you a temporary position at Wildridge," Dr. Chen confirmed. 6 months minimum, potentially extending to a year, during which you would work with our behavioral team to gradually transition Luna's care to our permanent staff. The proposal was unprecedented. Wildlife rehabilitation operated on the principle of creating distance between animals and their human caretakers, not deliberately maintaining those bonds. Yet here was a respected sanctuary suggesting exactly the opposite approach. "This isn't standard practice," Tom said, voicing the concern that hung in the air. "No, it's not," Dr. Chen agreed readily. "But Luna isn't a standard case. We've had success with similar approaches for wolves and coyotes with atypical socialization histories. The key difference is that we're not trying to erase the human bond. We're using it as a bridge to help the animal develop appropriate relationships with new caretakers." Elena frowned thoughtfully. "So you're suggesting a gradual transition rather than the abrupt separation we'd normally implement?" "Exactly. Luna's attachment to Maya isn't going to disappear simply because they're separated. In fact, abrupt separation could trigger severe stress responses that might compromise Luna's physical and psychological health." The discussion continued for nearly an hour, exploring the practical and ethical implications of this unusual approach. Throughout, Maya remained mostly silent, her mind racing with conflicting thoughts. The prospect of continuing to work with Luna filled her with unexpected joy, but professional caution warned against making decisions based on emotional attachment. "I need to consider what's truly best for Luna," she finally said when Tom asked for her thoughts. "Not what I want." Dr. Chen nodded approvingly. "That's precisely the attitude we're looking for. This isn't about keeping a wild animal as a pet or companion. It's about using the existing bond therapeutically to help Luna develop new, appropriate relationships." After further discussion, the team agreed to move forward with the placement at Wildridge, contingent on Maya's acceptance of the temporary position. Tom asked to speak with her privately after the meeting concluded. "You don't have to do this," he told her once they were alone in his office. "We can find another solution for Luna." Maya raised an eyebrow skeptically. "Can we? You know as well as I do that we've exhausted every other option." Tom sighed, running a hand through his graying hair. "I'm concerned about you, not just Luna. You've invested so much in this case already. Taking this position means putting your career here on hold, relocating to Montana, and eventually having to say goodbye anyway." His concerns were valid, and Maya had already considered each point. At 32, she had worked hard to build her reputation at the Colorado Wildlife Rehabilitation Center. A 6-month absence would mean passing her current cases to colleagues and potentially losing momentum on research projects she'd initiated. "I need some time to think," she said finally. "This isn't a decision I can make impulsively." That evening, Maya found herself drawn to the observation room overlooking Luna's enclosure. The bobcat was restless, pacing the perimeter of her space with focused intensity. Since the evaluation session with Dr. Chen, Luna had shown increased anxiety behaviors, decreased appetite, disrupted sleep patterns, excessive grooming. It was as if she sensed the uncertainty surrounding her future. "What's the right thing for you?" Maya whispered, watching as Luna finally settled on her favorite elevated perch, golden eyes scanning the enclosure with predatory awareness. Despite her unusual socialization, Luna remained a wild predator at her core, powerful, instinctual, designed by evolution for a life far different from captivity. The realization crystallized slowly as Maya observed Luna's restless movements. The right choice wasn't about keeping Luna wild or accepting her domesticated behaviors. It was about finding a third path, one that respected her unique nature while providing her the specialized care she needed. 3 days later, Maya accepted the position at Wildridge Sanctuary. The preparation for Luna's transfer consumed the next 2 weeks. Special transportation had to be arranged, medical records compiled, and behavior management protocols developed for the journey. Throughout this flurry of activity, Maya worked closely with Dr. Chen to understand what awaited them in Montana. Wildridge is different from traditional sanctuaries, Dr. Chen explained as they reviewed facility maps together. We're built on 320 acres of varied terrain, forests, meadows, rocky outcroppings, all secured with specialized fencing systems that allow our residents maximum freedom while ensuring their safety. The sanctuary housed 28 predators, including wolves, mountain lions, bears, and other bobcats. Each species had dedicated habitat areas designed to mimic their natural environments while providing necessary monitoring and care access. Luna will initially be housed in our transition area. Dr. Chen pointed to a section of the map. It's quieter, with limited exposure to other animals or unfamiliar humans. As she adjusts, we'll gradually introduce her to her permanent habitat. Maya nodded, studying the layout. And my accommodations? We have staff cabins along the north edge of the property. You'll have your own space, but be within easy reach of Luna's habitat. Our behavioral team works in shifts, so you won't be solely responsible for her care. The plan was comprehensive and thoughtfully designed, addressing both Luna's unique needs and the professional boundaries necessary for everyone involved. Still, as the departure date approached, Maya found herself plagued by doubts. Was she making this choice for Luna, or for herself? Was she prolonging an unnatural bond that should be severed for the Bobcat's own good? These questions haunted her on the morning of the transfer. Luna had been sedated for the journey, a necessary precaution that nonetheless added to Maya's unease. Watching the Bobcat's unconscious form being carefully loaded into the specialized transport vehicle, Maya felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. "You're doing the right thing," James told her as they said their goodbyes beside the transport van. "For what it's worth, I think this is Luna's best chance." Maya hugged him briefly, grateful for his steadfast support throughout the challenging case. "I hope you're right." The journey to Wildridge Sanctuary would take approximately 8 hours, a straight shot north through Wyoming and into southern Montana. Maya would ride in the transport vehicle, monitoring Luna's vital signs as the sedation gradually wore off. Dr. Chen would follow in a separate car, maintaining regular contact via radio. As they pulled away from the rehabilitation center, Maya watched the familiar buildings recede in the side mirror. For 6 years, this place had been the center of her professional life. Now she was venturing into unknown territory, following a path she had never anticipated. Luna stirred slightly under the light sedation, a small chirping sound escaping from her throat. Maya reached through the transport crate's access panel, gently stroking the Bobcat's spotted fur to reassure her. "We're in this together," she whispered, as much to herself as to Luna. "Whatever happens next." Wildridge Sanctuary emerged from the Montana landscape like something from another world. As the transport vehicle passed through the main gates, Maya caught her first glimpse of the sprawling facility, a harmonious blend of natural environment and thoughtfully designed infrastructure. Unlike traditional wildlife centers with their obvious enclosures and clinical atmosphere, Wildridge appeared almost like a nature preserve, with buildings nestled discreetly among the trees and rocky outcroppings. "Welcome to Wildridge," Dr. Chen said as she pulled her car alongside the transport vehicle at the intake building. Her expression was warm but professional as she added, "How's our patient doing?" "Starting to wake up," Maya reported, checking Luna's vital signs one more time. The Bobcat had begun showing signs of increased awareness during the final hour of their journey, her sedation wearing off as planned. Heart rate and respiration are stable. She's going to be fully alert soon. A team of 4 staff members emerged from the intake building, moving with the quiet efficiency that characterized experienced wildlife handlers. Maya recognized the careful way they positioned themselves, close enough to assist if needed, but maintaining sufficient distance to prevent overwhelming the arriving animal. "This is our predator care team," Dr. Chen introduced as they prepared to unload Luna. "Marcus is our veterinary specialist, Sophia and Raj are behavioral experts, and Devin handles habitat management. They'll be working with you throughout Luna's transition." Maya nodded in greeting, her attention primarily focused on Luna, who was now fully awake inside her transport crate. The Bobcat's golden eyes darted around anxiously, taking in the unfamiliar surroundings and people. When her gaze landed on Maya, she made the distinctive chirping sound that had become her signature greeting. "She recognizes you even after the sedation," Sophia observed, her professional interest evident. That's the vocalization you documented in her files. Yes, Maya confirmed. It's her social greeting call. She uses different vocalizations for different situations. This one is specifically for recognition and positive association. The team proceeded with practiced precision, transferring Luna's crate to a specially prepared enclosure within the intake building. Unlike the quarantine facilities Maya was accustomed to, this space was designed with both physical and psychological comfort in mind. Natural substrate flooring, multiple elevated platforms, visual barriers for security, and environmental enrichment already in place. We'll give her 24 hours to acclimate before beginning any formal assessment, Marcus explained as they secured the transfer door. Standard protocol is minimal human presence during this period, but given Luna's unique case, I should stay visible, Maya finished, understanding immediately, to provide continuity and reduce stress. Marcus nodded. Exactly. We've prepared an observation area where you can remain in her line of sight without direct interaction. The next 24 hours proved critical in establishing Luna's adjustment pattern. Initially, the Bobcat displayed typical signs of stress in a new environment: hypervigilance, minimal exploration, refusal of food. But whenever her gaze found Maya in the observation area, her anxiety visibly decreased. She would chirp, her ears would perk forward, and her posture would momentarily relax. It's fascinating, Raj commented as they reviewed the behavioral data at the end of the first day. She's using you as a secure base, similar to how juvenile primates use their mothers when exploring new territories. I've seen this in wolf packs and among captive-raised coyotes, but rarely so distinctly in felids. By the second day, Luna had begun tentatively exploring her new space, always circling back to check Maya's continued presence before venturing further. On the third day, she accepted food for the first time. A fresh rabbit carcass placed in her enclosure through a remote delivery system. She's adapting faster than anticipated, Dr. Chen noted during the evening assessment meeting. We're ready to begin the first phase of transition training. The training protocol developed for Luna was unlike anything Maya had previously encountered in wildlife rehabilitation. Rather than focusing on minimizing human connection, it acknowledged the existing bond and used it as a tool for building new associations. The theory is called bridging attachment, Sophia explained as she outlined the approach. Instead of trying to break Luna's attachment to you, which would likely cause significant distress, we gradually extend her circle of positive associations to include other caregivers. The process began with carefully structured sessions where Maya and one team member would be present simultaneously, with Maya initially taking the lead in all interactions while the team member remained peripherally involved. Over subsequent sessions, the team member would gradually increase their participation while Maya incrementally stepped back. It's like a carefully choreographed dance, Devon observed after a particularly successful session with Luna. She's starting to accept my presence when it's paired with yours. Maya found herself both professionally fascinated and emotionally challenged by the process. The scientific part of her brain meticulously documented Luna's responses, noting patterns and adaptations with researchers' precision. But watching Luna gradually form connections with others stirred unexpected feelings. Pride mingled with an irrational sense of loss. It's normal to feel conflicted, Dr. Chen assured her during their weekly one-on-one check-in. You formed a significant bond with Luna. Seeing that bond evolve naturally triggers complex emotions. I'm a wildlife rehabilitator, Maya replied, her tone more defensive than she'd intended. I know better than to form inappropriate attachments to wild animals. Dr. Chen's response was gentle but direct. Knowledge doesn't negate feeling, Maya. The most experienced professionals can still experience emotional responses. What matters is how we manage those feelings within the context of our ethical obligations. This conversation marked a turning point in Maya's approach to her temporary role at Wildridge. She began recognizing and acknowledging her emotional responses while maintaining clear professional boundaries, a balancing act that proved more challenging than she had anticipated. As weeks turned into months, Luna's circle of trusted humans gradually expanded. She now accepted care from Marcus, Sophia, and Raj with minimal anxiety, though she still showed clear preference for Maya's presence during new or potentially stressful situations. The most significant milestone came 4 months into their time at Wildridge, when Luna was transitioned from the intake facility to her permanent habitat, a spacious enclosure encompassing nearly 2 acres of varied terrain, complete with trees for climbing, rocky outcroppings for sunning, and a small stream running through one corner. The day of transfer arrived with perfect Montana spring weather, clear skies and mild temperatures, ideal for minimizing additional stressors. Luna was lightly sedated for the move, just enough to take the edge off her anxiety without fully suppressing her awareness. Maya accompanied the transport team, maintaining visual contact with Luna throughout the process. As they approached the new habitat, she felt her own anxiety rising. This represented a major step in their journey, one that would test the effectiveness of everything they'd worked toward. "She's going to do great," Sophia reassured her, correctly reading Maya's tension. Once inside the spacious new enclosure, they positioned Luna's transport crate near a sheltered den area and prepared for release. As the sedation wore off and the Bobcat became more alert, Maya positioned herself where Luna could easily see her upon emergence. The crate door was opened remotely, and the team retreated to the observation blind to monitor Luna's response. For several long minutes, the Bobcat remained inside the crate, cautiously assessing her new surroundings. Then, slowly, she emerged, her powerful body moving with the natural grace of her species. Luna's first action upon entering her new territory spoke volumes about her unique nature. Rather than immediately seeking shelter or defensible position as a typical Bobcat would, she searched until she located Maya in the observation blind. Only after making eye contact and chirping her greeting did she begin methodically exploring her expanded territory. "That right there," Dr. Chen murmured, "is why your presence has been so essential to this process. She's using you as her security anchor while she adapts to each new situation." Maya watched as Luna investigated her new home, moving with increasing confidence as she mapped the boundaries and features of the habitat. The spring sunshine illuminated her spotted coat, highlighting the muscular development that had transformed her from the injured kitten Maya had rescued into a magnificent adult Bobcat. "She looks like she belongs here," Maya said softly, the words catching slightly in her throat. Dr. Chen nodded. "She does, and that's the goal we're all working toward, helping her find where she truly belongs." Life at Wildridge Sanctuary fell into a rhythm as spring blossomed into early summer. Luna adapted to her new habitat with remarkable flexibility, establishing territory patterns that blended wild Bobcat instincts with her unique behavioral profile. Each morning, Maya would arrive at the observation area to find Luna waiting, those intelligent golden eyes tracking her movements with uncanny awareness. "She's mapped your schedule," Raj noted with professional admiration after observing this pattern for several weeks. "She's at the nearest viewing point approximately 10 minutes before your usual arrival time every day. That level of time association is extraordinary for a wild felid." Luna's daily routine had expanded to include interactions with the entire care team, though these relationships differed significantly from her bond with Maya. With Marcus, the veterinary specialist, she displayed pragmatic cooperation during health checks and necessary procedures. With Sophia, she engaged in what the behavioral expert called parallel play, activities conducted simultaneously but separately, with periodic social acknowledgement. With Raj, she demonstrated problem-solving behaviors, seemingly enjoying the cognitive challenges he designed for her enrichment. She's categorized us, Sophia theorized during one team meeting. Each human represents a different type of relationship in her social framework. It's almost like she's created her own classification system for interspecies interaction. This observation sparked a research initiative at Wildridge, with Luna as the primary subject. The team began documenting every aspect of her behavior, creating a comprehensive profile that might help other facilities working with animals caught between wild and captive behavioral patterns. For Maya, these developments brought both professional satisfaction and growing personal conflict. Luna was thriving under the sanctuary's specialized care, her physical health excellent, and her psychological well-being stable. The transition plan was working exactly as designed, which meant Maya's temporary position would eventually come to its planned conclusion. "You've been here 5 months now, Dr. Chen remarked during their scheduled progress assessment. "According to our original timeline, we're approaching the point where we need to evaluate whether your presence remains necessary for Luna's continued adjustment." The words, though delivered with sensitivity, hit Maya with unexpected force. She had known from the beginning that her role at Wildridge was temporary, a bridge to help Luna transition to permanent care. Yet somehow, the reality of eventual separation had remained abstract, a future concern rather than an imminent decision. "What's your assessment?" Maya asked, professional training helping her maintain a neutral tone despite the sudden tightness in her chest. Dr. Chen consulted her notes thoughtfully. "Luna has established secure relationships with all primary caregivers. Her stress indicators remain within normal parameters during routine care procedures, even when you're not present. The only situation where she still shows clear preference for your presence is during novel or potentially threatening experiences." "So she still needs me," Maya concluded, unable to completely hide the relief in her voice. "For specific contexts, yes," Dr. Chen agreed. "But the dependency has decreased significantly. We should begin testing longer periods of separation to evaluate her responses." The separation testing began gradually, first with Maya absent during routine feeding times, then during habitat maintenance, and eventually for full days. Luna's reactions were carefully monitored through both direct observation and the habitat's unobtrusive camera system. The results proved encouraging yet complex. Luna showed increased vigilance during Maya's absences, but no severe distress behaviors. She continued normal activities, hunting the small live prey released into her habitat, patrolling her territory, engaging with enrichment objects while periodically checking the observation areas as if expecting Maya's return. "She's handling it better than I expected," Maya admitted to Sophia after reviewing the footage from her first full day away from the sanctuary. They sat in the staff cabin's common area, the evening Montana light casting long shadows through the windows. Sophia smiled knowingly. "Better than you're handling it, perhaps." The gentle observation caught Maya off guard. "I'm a professional. I understand the process." "Understanding and feeling are different things," Sophia replied, echoing Dr. Chen's earlier wisdom. "You're allowed to have emotions about this, Maya. Everyone here does." This simple permission to acknowledge the emotional complexity of her situation cracked something in Maya's carefully maintained professional facade. For months, she had focused exclusively on Luna's welfare, suppressing her own conflicted feelings about their evolving relationship. "I want what's best for her," Maya said finally, her voice quiet in the gathering dusk. "I just didn't expect it to be this difficult to step back." "It's difficult because you care," Sophia observed. "And that caring has been instrumental to Luna's success here. Without your willingness to form and then gradually transform that bond, we wouldn't have made nearly as much progress." The conversation marked another turning point for Maya, an acknowledgement that her professional journey with Luna included legitimate emotional dimensions that deserved recognition rather than suppression. As the separation testing continued, Maya began tentatively planning for her eventual return to Colorado. The rehabilitation center had kept her position open, with Tom checking in regularly on her progress at Wildridge. Her colleagues sent updates about ongoing cases and new rescues, maintaining her connection to the work that had defined her career. Yet the prospect of leaving Montana and Luna filled her with a complex mixture of emotions that defied simple categorization. Professional satisfaction at a successful transition mingled with a profound sense of impending loss, creating an emotional landscape she struggled to navigate. This internal conflict reached a critical point when unexpected circumstances forced an accelerated separation test. A severe summer storm damaged part of the sanctuary's perimeter fencing, requiring all available staff to assist with emergency repairs. Maya was assigned to the repair team furthest from Luna's habitat, meaning she would be absent for a full 3 days during the intensive work. "We've been moving toward this anyway," Dr. Chen pointed out when Maya expressed concern about the sudden extended separation. "This gives us an opportunity to assess Luna's responses in a real-world scenario rather than a controlled test." Despite the rational justification, Maya felt uneasy as she gathered her gear for the repair mission. Luna had been restless that morning, pacing her habitat with unusual intensity, as if sensing the approaching storm, or perhaps the impending separation. "I'll be back in 3 days," Maya told her during their brief morning interaction, feeling slightly foolish for speaking as if the Bobcat could understand specific time frames. Yet Luna's focused attention as she spoke suggested some level of comprehension that transcended normal animal cognition. The storm hit with remarkable force that afternoon, bringing driving rain and powerful winds that whipped through the valley where Wildridge was situated. Maya and the repair team worked through deteriorating conditions, securing damaged sections of fencing as the weather intensified around them. By evening, conditions had become too dangerous to continue, and the team retreated to an emergency shelter positioned at strategic points around the sanctuary's perimeter. Communication systems remained functional but limited, with priority given to security updates rather than routine monitoring. Maya spent an uncomfortable night listening to the storm rage outside the sturdy shelter, her thoughts repeatedly returning to Luna. Had the Bobcat found appropriate protection from the elements in her habitat? Was she experiencing stress without the reassurance of Maya's regular presence? The questions circled endlessly, professional concern indistinguishable from personal attachment. Morning brought clearing skies but new challenges. The storm had caused more extensive damage than initially assessed, requiring the repair teams to extend their work by at least another day. The sanctuary's power systems were operating on emergency generators, and several habitat monitoring systems had been temporarily disabled. It was midday before Maya received any update on Luna. Raj's voice crackled through the radio, his typically calm tone tinged with concern. "Maya, are you there? We need you back at Luna's habitat as soon as possible." "What's happened?" she demanded, immediate alarm overriding protocol. There was a brief pause before his response came through the static. "Luna's gone." The world seemed to tilt beneath Maya's feet as Raj's words registered. "Luna's gone." 3 syllables that shattered the careful balance she had maintained between professional dedication and personal attachment. "What do you mean gone?" she demanded, already gathering her equipment with frantic efficiency. "Did she escape the habitat? Is she still on sanctuary grounds?" "The storm damaged part of her enclosure," Raj explained, his voice fighting through bursts of static. "A tree fell across the northern section. We found the breach during morning inspection, but no sign of Luna. Dr. Chen has organized search teams. She wants you to coordinate the eastern quadrant since you're most familiar with Luna's patterns." Maya was already moving, abandoning non-essential gear as she calculated the fastest route back to the main sanctuary. The 3-mile hike that would normally take an hour, she completed in 35 punishing minutes, pushing through exhaustion and the slippery post-storm terrain with single-minded determination. Dr. Chen was waiting at the Emergency Operations Center established in the main building, her usual composure strained but intact as she briefed the assembled search teams. Based on tracking conditions and the estimated time of the enclosure breach, we believe Luna has been free for approximately 8 to 10 hours, she explained, pointing to a topographical map where search quadrants had been marked. Fortunately, the storm has left ideal conditions for tracking, soft ground that will hold prints clearly. Maya studied the map, her mind racing through possibilities. As a bobcat, Luna would naturally seek elevated positions that provided both shelter and visual advantage. But Luna wasn't a typical bobcat. Her behavior patterns blended wild instincts with learned responses that made her movements less predictable. "She'll be frightened by the storm and the sudden freedom," Maya said, thinking aloud. Her instinct would be to find enclosed, protected space, but she's also been exhibiting increased territorial behavior this past month, scent marking, boundary patrolling. "You think she might try to establish a new territory?" Marcus asked. Maya shook her head. "Not immediately. First priority would be security, then familiar elements." A thought struck her suddenly. The observation areas, she associates those with safety and routine. She might seek out similar structures. Dr. Chen nodded thoughtfully. "There's an old wildlife blind on the eastern ridge, similar in construction to our observation areas. It was used for research before the sanctuary was established." "I'll start there," Maya decided, already checking her tracking equipment. The search teams deployed methodically, each equipped with tranquilizer kits in case Luna was found in a situation requiring immediate intervention. Maya headed eastward with 2 sanctuary staff members who knew the terrain intimately, their eyes constantly scanning for tracks or signs of the missing bobcat. The emotional turmoil threatening to overwhelm Maya was temporarily channeled into hyper-focused attention on the search. Every broken twig, every depression in the mud-slicked ground demanded evaluation. Was that partial print from Luna's distinctive gait, with the slightly heavier impression on the right paw? Could that disturbed patch of leaves indicate a bobcat's passage? 3 hours into the search, they found their first definitive sign, bobcat scat, fresh enough to have been deposited since the storm. Maya examined it carefully, recognizing characteristics specific to Luna's diet at the sanctuary. "She came this way," Maya confirmed, feeling a surge of hope that momentarily displaced her anxiety. "And recently." The tracks became more evident as they continued eastward, moving toward higher ground where the old wildlife blind was supposedly located. Luna was traveling purposefully, not the erratic pattern of a panicked animal, but the deliberate progress of one with a destination in mind. "She's heading straight for the blind," one of the staff members noted with surprise, "almost like she knows where it is." Maya didn't respond, but the observation reinforced her growing understanding of Luna's exceptional cognitive abilities. Somehow the bobcat had oriented herself in unfamiliar territory and was navigating toward a structure similar to one she associated with safety. The old wildlife blind came into view as they crested a small rise, a weathered wooden structure partially concealed by surrounding vegetation, its observation windows facing a natural clearing that would attract wildlife. Maya signaled for her companions to hang back as she approached slowly, every sense alert for signs of Luna's presence. The tracking evidence led directly to the blind's entrance. Maya paused, unslinging her tranquilizer gun but keeping it pointed downward. If Luna was inside, startling her could provoke a defensive reaction dangerous to both of them. "Luna," she called softly, using the gentle tone that had become their private language. "Are you in there, girl?" A distinctive chirp answered immediately. that unique vocalization that Luna reserved exclusively for greeting Maya. The sound sent a wave of relief so powerful that Maya momentarily closed her eyes, steadying herself against the blind's outer wall. "I'm coming in," she called softly. "It's just me." Moving with deliberate slowness, Maya pushed open the blind's weathered door. The interior was dim after the bright Montana sunshine, but she immediately made out Luna's form huddled in the far corner. The bobcat's ears were forward, her posture alert but not defensive. Most remarkably, her tail was twitching in the distinctive rhythm that the team had come to recognize as her expression of positive anticipation. "There you are," Maya breathed, maintaining her position just inside the doorway. "You gave us quite a scare." Luna chirped again, but didn't move from her corner. As Maya's eyes adjusted to the dim light, she could see why. The bobcat was crouched protectively over something small and moving. "Oh my God," Maya whispered as comprehension dawned. "You're not alone." Nestled beneath Luna's protective form was a tiny fawn, no more than a few days old. It lay curled against the bobcat's warm body, apparently uninjured but clearly separated from its mother. In any natural circumstance, a bobcat and fawn would represent predator and prey. Yet Luna had positioned herself as protector rather than hunter. Maya reached slowly for her radio, keeping her movements fluid and non-threatening. "This is Maya. I found Luna at the old blind. She's uninjured, but there's a complication. She's with a fawn, protecting it, not hunting it. I need Dr. Chen and the veterinary team, but approach with extreme caution. Over." The response was immediate, Dr. Chen's voice conveying controlled surprise. "Understood. Stay in position. We're on our way. Out." For the next 20 minutes, Maya remained just inside the doorway, speaking softly to Luna while observing this extraordinary tableau. The bobcat maintained her protective posture over the fawn, occasionally grooming its spotted coat with gentle licks that defied every natural instinct of her species. "What happened out there?" Maya murmured, not expecting an answer but needing to fill the silence. "Did the storm separate it from its mother? How did you two find each other?" Luna chirped again, then did something even more remarkable. She nudged the fawn gently with her nose, as if encouraging it to stand, then looked expectantly at Maya. The communication was unmistakable. She was presenting her found charge for Maya's inspection and approval. The behavior was so dog-like, so contrary to everything a wild bobcat should do, that Maya found herself momentarily speechless. This went beyond Luna's unusual socialization or her bond with humans. This represented a fundamental rewriting of predator instincts, a transformation of natural drives into something unprecedented. Dr. Chen and Marcus arrived with careful quietness, taking in the scene from the doorway with professional assessment overlaid with obvious amazement. "In 20 years of wildlife work," Dr. Chen whispered, "I've never seen anything like this." Marcus was already preparing a mild sedative for Luna, knowing they would need to separate her from the fawn to properly examine both animals. But before he could administer it, Luna did something that none of them had anticipated. With gentle movements, she picked up the fawn by the scruff of its neck, just as a mother cat would carry a kitten, and carried it the few steps to Maya's feet. There, she set it down carefully, then looked up with an expression that seemed to communicate a clear message. "I found this. It needs help. You'll know what to do." "She's bringing it to you," Dr. Chen breathed. "She's literally bringing a rescued animal to a human for help. There's no protocol for this." The next 48 hours unfolded in a blur of activity as the Wildridge team grappled with their unprecedented situation. Luna was safely returned to a temporary enclosure while repairs to her habitat continued. The fawn, a female white-tailed deer estimated to be less than a week old, was examined by Marcus, and placed in the sanctuary's specialized care unit for orphaned or injured young animals. Physically, she's in remarkably good condition, Marcus reported during an emergency team meeting the following morning. Mild dehydration, but no injuries. Based on her condition, she's been separated from her mother for less than 24 hours. It's extraordinary that she survived the storm at all, let alone an encounter with a predator. Not just survived an encounter, Sophia emphasized, reviewing the behavioral notes she'd compiled. Been actively protected by that predator. We need to be very clear about what we observed. Luna wasn't simply not harming the fawn. She was exhibiting caretaking behaviors consistent with maternal protection. The implications of this observation rippled through the room. Wildlife rehabilitation was founded on understanding natural behaviors and ecological relationships. Predator-prey dynamics represented one of the most fundamental of these relationships, yet Luna had completely inverted those expected behaviors, acting against her species' most basic instincts. We need to consider what this means for Luna's continued care, Dr. Chen said, addressing the question everyone was contemplating. This level of behavioral adaptation goes well beyond what we initially understood about her socialization patterns. For Maya, the discovery had triggered a profound reevaluation of everything she thought she understood about Luna and about wildlife rehabilitation generally. Her professional training had always emphasized the importance of maintaining natural behaviors in animals destined for release or sanctuary care. Luna's protection of the fawn represented something that transcended those categories entirely. She recognized vulnerability and responded with protection rather than predation, Maya said, struggling to articulate the significance. That's not just learned behavior or socialization. It's a form of empathy that we don't typically attribute to wild predators. The fawn, temporarily named Willow by the care team, required specialized care, including bottle feeding with a formula designed to replicate doe's milk. What no one anticipated was Luna's continued interest in the young deer's welfare. From her temporary enclosure, the Bobcat tracked the comings and goings of staff to the fawn's care unit, displaying visible agitation when she heard Willow's bleating cries during feeding times. She's still connected to the fawn, Raj observed on the third day, watching Luna pace anxiously as Willow's vocalizations carried across the sanctuary. She's responding to distress calls that should trigger predatory instincts, but are instead activating caregiving responses. After extensive discussion and careful risk assessment, the team decided to attempt a supervised reintroduction, allowing Luna to see and potentially interact with Willow under controlled conditions. The potential research value was enormous, but safety concerns required meticulous planning. We'll use the socialization area, Dr. Chen decided, referring to a neutral space designed for controlled animal interactions. Full observation team, emergency response protocols in place, and immediate intervention capacity if needed. Maya was designated as the primary handler for Luna, while Marcus would manage Willow's care during the interaction. The tension was palpable as they prepared for this unprecedented meeting between natural predator and prey, a relationship that evolutionary biology had defined as one of the most unbridgeable in nature. When the moment of introduction arrived, the entire sanctuary team held their collective breath. Luna entered the socialization area first, immediately alert and scanning for the fawn whose scent she clearly recognized. When Marcus brought Willow in, the Bobcat's reaction defied every expectation. Luna approached with the same careful, non-threatening posture she had displayed in the wildlife blind. Willow, rather than showing fear, wobbled toward the Bobcat on unsteady legs. The meeting culminated in a moment that the assembled wildlife experts would later struggle to describe in scientific terminology. Luna gently grooming the fawn's spotted coat, while Willow leaned trustingly against her former predator's warm body. "We're witnessing something revolutionary," Dr. Chen said quietly as they observed this remarkable interaction. something that challenges fundamental assumptions about behavioral biology. News of this extraordinary relationship spread quickly throughout the wildlife conservation community. What had begun as a unique rehabilitation case had evolved into something with profound implications for understanding animal cognition and behavioral plasticity. Requests for research access and documentation poured in from universities and conservation organizations worldwide. For Maya, the unfolding events created a professional and personal crossroads more complex than any she had anticipated. Her temporary position at Wildridge had been scheduled to conclude in just 3 weeks, yet Luna's escape, her rescue of Willow, and the unprecedented relationship that followed had fundamentally altered the situation. "We need to discuss your timeline," Dr. Chen said during a private meeting in her office a week after the fawn's discovery. Outside the window, Montana summer was in full bloom, painting the sanctuary grounds in vibrant greens and wildflower colors. "Given recent developments, I believe Luna's case requires continued specialized attention." Maya nodded, her emotions carefully contained beneath professional composure. "I've been thinking the same thing. This goes well beyond our original transition plan. The board has authorized me to offer you an extended position," Dr. Chen continued, "not just for Luna's care, but to help develop and document a formal research protocol around this case. What we're observing has significant implications for wildlife rehabilitation approaches generally." The offer represented both opportunity and challenge. Extending her stay at Wildridge would mean further postponing her return to Colorado, potentially requiring difficult conversations with Tom about her long-term role at the rehabilitation center. Yet the professional significance was undeniable, the chance to document and analyze a behavioral phenomenon that defied conventional understanding of wildlife behavior. "I need some time to consider," Maya replied, though in truth, her heart had already made the decision her mind was still processing. That evening, Maya sat alone on the porch of her staff cabin, watching the sunset paint the Montana sky in spectacular oranges and purples. Her phone displayed Tom's contact information, the call she needed to make sitting heavy in her hand. When the connection went through, his familiar voice brought an unexpected wave of nostalgia for the Colorado Center that had been her professional home for so many years. "Maya, good to hear from you. How's our Bobcat doing?" The simple question contained layers of complexity she hardly knew how to address. How could she explain what Luna had become? Not just a successfully rehabilitated bobcat, but something that challenged the very categories of wild and domestic, predator and caretaker. "That's actually why I'm calling," she began, then found herself relating the extraordinary events of the past week. Luna's escape during the storm, the discovery in the wildlife blind, the bobcat's protection of a natural prey animal, and the ongoing relationship that defied biological explanation. Tom's silence as she concluded spoke volumes. When he finally responded, his tone carried both professional concern and personal understanding. "This is unprecedented, Maya, from a research perspective alone." "I know," she interrupted gently. "Dr. Chen has offered to extend my position here to document and study this relationship. I wanted to talk to you before making any decisions." The conversation that followed was difficult but necessary. Tom had held her position at the Colorado Center, expecting her return in a matter of weeks. An extended absence would require significant reorganization of their staff and cases. "You need to stay," he said finally, surprising her with his certainty. "What you're describing, it's the kind of case that comes along once in a career, if ever. The research potential alone justifies the extension." Relief mingled with gratitude as Maya thanked him for his understanding. As they concluded their call, Tom added one final observation that stayed with her long after they disconnected. "You know, Maya, Sometimes the animals we think we're rehabilitating end up changing us more than we change them. Sounds like Luna might be that animal for you. The Montana summer faded into autumn, painting the Wild Ridge landscape in spectacular golds and crimsons as the sanctuary's research initiative around Luna and Willow took formal shape. What began as observation of an anomalous relationship evolved into a groundbreaking study on behavioral plasticity in predator species, attracting attention from wildlife experts worldwide. Luna's expanded enclosure, redesigned to prevent future escapes while providing enriched natural habitat, now included a specialized adjacent area where controlled interactions with Willow could be safely conducted. The young deer had grown rapidly over the summer months, her spindly legs strengthening and her spotted fawn coat beginning to give way to the tawny adult coloration she would eventually develop. Their relationship is evolving as Willow matures, Maya observed to Dr. Chen as they reviewed footage from the morning's interaction session. On screen, Luna and Willow engaged in what could only be described as play behavior, the bobcat initiating a game of chase that carefully modulated her natural predatory speed to match the fawn's capabilities. The remarkable thing isn't just that Luna isn't hunting Willow, Dr. Chen noted, pausing the footage at a particularly telling moment where the bobcat deliberately rolled onto her back, exposing her vulnerable underside as the fawn approached. It's that she's fundamentally rewritten the predator-prey script into a social relationship that incorporates elements of both feline and canine behavioral patterns. The research team had documented over 60 distinct behaviors that defied conventional wildlife categories, from Luna's continued protective responses when Willow vocalized distress to complex play rituals that seemed to incorporate aspects of both species' natural patterns. She's creating a hybrid behavioral language, Sophia suggested during one analysis session. Taking elements from her own instinctual repertoire, adding learned responses from her interactions with humans, and adapting everything to communicate effectively with a species she should view as prey. For Maya, these professional observations were layered with personal significance. Her extended position at Wild Ridge had transformed from temporary assignment to indefinite research role, with the Colorado Rehabilitation Center graciously releasing her from previous obligations to pursue this unprecedented case study. The sanctuary had become home, her small staff cabin personalized with touches that reflected a life transplanted rather than temporarily relocated. Photos from Colorado shared wall space with new images of Montana landscapes. Her professional library had expanded with research materials specifically related to Luna's case. Most tellingly, she had adopted a rescue dog, a middle-aged Australian Shepherd mix named Cooper, who had been found abandoned near the sanctuary gates in late summer. The gentle, intelligent dog had become her constant companion during off hours, accompanying her on hikes through the surrounding wilderness and sleeping contentedly at the foot of her bed each night. "I never thought of myself as a dog person," she confessed to Sophia during one of their regular coffee meetings in the sanctuary's small cafeteria. "Always identified with the independent nature of wild felines." Sophia smiled knowingly. Luna's not the only one adapting behavioral patterns. The observation was perceptive but incomplete. Maya's evolving relationship with Cooper represented more than simply opening herself to canine companionship. It reflected a deeper shift in her understanding of the connections possible between species, a willingness to embrace relationships that defied conventional categories or expectations. This theme echoed throughout her professional work as well. The research protocol she had developed with Dr. Chen and the behavioral team incorporated methodologies from diverse disciplines, traditional wildlife biology and ethology alongside approaches from cognitive science, comparative psychology, and even aspects of child development theory. "We're essentially creating a new framework for understanding interspecies relationships," Dr. Chen noted with satisfaction after their research proposal was accepted for publication in one of wildlife conservation's most prestigious journals. Luna and Willow are challenging our fundamental assumptions about behavioral boundaries. As autumn deepened, the research team faced new questions about long-term care plans for both animals. Willow was approaching the age where young deer naturally begin separating from their mothers, establishing independent patterns that would eventually lead to complete separation. In normal rehabilitation circumstances, she would soon be evaluated for potential release into an appropriate wilderness area. Luna's case presented different complexities. Her unique behavioral profile had long since established her as permanently unreleasable. Her comfort with humans and atypical social patterns making her unsuitable for return to the wild, but her bond with Willow raised unprecedented questions about how that permanent sanctuary care should be structured. We need to consider whether separation would be detrimental to either or both of them, Maya argued during a planning meeting as winter approached. We're dealing with a social bond that has no natural equivalent, but appears to provide significant psychological benefit to both animals. The question sparked intensive debate among the sanctuary team, with opinions divided between traditional approaches that would naturally separate predator and prey species and innovative proposals that would maintain some form of their unusual relationship. While these professional discussions continued, Maya found herself increasingly aware of her own emotional investment in the outcome. Her bond with Luna had evolved during their months at Wildridge, no longer defined by the intense dependency of their early relationship, but transformed into something more balanced and mutually respectful. Luna still greeted Maya with her distinctive chirp when she arrived for morning observations, still displayed clear preference for her presence during new situations or potential stressors. But the Bobcat had also developed strong positive relationships with other caregivers, demonstrating a social flexibility that continued to expand rather than contract as she matured. "She's not dependent on you anymore," Raj observed after Luna cooperated seamlessly with a veterinary procedure despite Maya's absence. "But she still chooses you when given options. That's a healthier relationship dynamic than where you started." The observation resonated deeply with Maya's own evolving understanding of her role in Luna's life. What began as rescue and rehabilitation had transformed into something more complex, a relationship between two intelligent species finding common ground despite evolutionary differences designed to separate them. This realization informed Maya's approach to the question of Luna and Willow's future. Rather than imposing traditional wildlife management frameworks, she advocated for an adaptive approach that would respond to the animal's demonstrated preferences and well-being indicators. "If we're serious about respecting their agency, we need to create conditions where they can show us what works best for them," she argued. Controlled choice rather than predetermined separation. The proposal she eventually presented to the Sanctuary Board represented a significant departure from conventional wildlife management practices. It outlined a carefully designed habitat system that would allow Luna and Willow to choose their level of interaction while maintaining appropriate safety measures for both animals. "We would create adjacent but connected habitats with multiple access points that either animal could use or avoid," she explained, presenting detailed designs developed in collaboration with the sanctuary's habitat specialists. Monitoring would track their natural patterns of association and separation, allowing us to adapt the system based on actual behavioral data rather than theoretical expectations. The innovative approach generated intense discussion among the board members, some questioning whether it represented appropriate wildlife management, and others recognizing its potential contributions to evolving understanding of animal cognition and welfare. In the end, Dr. Chen's support proved decisive. "What we're witnessing with Luna and Willow challenges our most basic assumptions about natural relationships between species," she reminded the board. Our response should be equally innovative, guided by science but not constrained by outdated paradigms. With the board's conditional approval, construction began on the specialized habitat system as Montana winter settled over the sanctuary. The project would take months to complete, requiring careful integration with the existing landscapes and extensive safety testing before Luna and Willow could be introduced to their new homes. Throughout the planning and initial construction phases, Maya continued her daily work with both animals, documenting their interactions while privately contemplating the broader implications of their unusual bond. If a bobcat could transcend evolutionary programming to protect rather than hunt a natural prey species, what other assumptions about natural limitations might be similarly flexible? Winter gradually yielded to spring at Wildridge Sanctuary, the snowy landscape reluctantly surrendering to patches of green as construction on Luna and Willow's innovative habitat system neared completion. The integrated enclosure represented a revolutionary approach to wildlife care, a physical manifestation of the new paradigms emerging from Luna's extraordinary case. "We're 3 days from final inspection," Devin reported during the morning team meeting, pride evident in his voice as he displayed the latest progress photos. "Safety testing has exceeded all requirements and the native plantings are establishing well in both primary areas." For Maya, the impending transition represented both professional culmination and personal milestone. Nearly a year had passed since her arrival at Wildridge, what was intended as a temporary 6-month assignment transforming into a career-defining research initiative. The manuscript documenting Luna's unique behavioral development had been accepted by the Journal of Comparative Psychology, with publication scheduled for the summer issue. Yet beneath these professional achievements ran currents of uncertainty about her own future. Her extended position at the sanctuary would conclude with the completion of the habitat transition and initial monitoring period, approximately 2 months from now. Though Dr. Chen had hinted at possibilities for a permanent role, nothing had been formalized. "Have you thought about what comes next?" Sophia asked as they observed Luna during her morning health check. The bobcat had matured into a magnificent adult, her spotted coat gleaming with health, her movements displaying the power and grace characteristic of her species, yet still overlaid with the unique behavioral adaptations that made her case so remarkable. "Colorado still has my position open," Maya replied, intentionally focusing on practical matters rather than the emotional complexities beneath the surface. "Tom calls monthly to see when I might be returning." Sophia nodded thoughtfully but didn't press further, recognizing the sensitivity surrounding Maya's eventual departure, not just from the research project, but from Luna. Despite all their success in expanding the bobcat's social connections to include the entire care team, the bond between Luna and Maya remained distinctive, a relationship that defied conventional categorization. 3 days later, final inspection of the new habitat system was completed successfully, setting in motion the carefully choreographed transition plan. Luna would be introduced to her section first, allowing her to establish territory patterns and become comfortable with the new environment before Willow's integration began. The morning of Luna's transfer arrived with perfect spring weather, mild temperatures and clear skies creating ideal conditions for minimizing stress during the move. As the team made final preparations, Maya found herself experiencing unexpected emotional turbulence, a sense of impending change that extended beyond the simple logistics of habitat transition. "You okay?" James asked quietly, noticing her distraction as they prepared the transport equipment. He had arrived from Colorado 2 days earlier, officially to observe the innovative habitat design, but also, Maya suspected, to discuss her potential return to the rehabilitation center. "Just focused on making this go smoothly," she replied, deflecting the deeper question beneath his concern. Luna's transport proceeded without complications, the bobcat's trust in her caregivers evident in her calm compliance with the familiar process. When released into her new habitat, she emerged cautiously from the transport crate, scanning the expanded territory with alert golden eyes before beginning methodical exploration of her surroundings. Textbook transition behavior, Raj noted with satisfaction as they observed from the monitoring station. She's displaying appropriate territorial assessment without stress indicators. Over the next several days, Luna settled into her new environment with remarkable adaptability, establishing preferred resting areas and movement patterns that utilize the habitat's diverse features. Most significantly, she demonstrated immediate interest in the specialized transition zones designed to eventually connect with Willow's adjacent territory. She's actively investigating the connection points, Maya reported during the daily assessment meeting, scent marking the area and spending increased time near the secure viewports where she can observe Willow's territory. 1 week after Luna's successful transition, the team prepared for the second phase, introducing Willow to her connected habitat. The young deer had grown considerably over the winter months, her fawn spots almost completely replaced by adult coloration, her body developing the muscular definition that would eventually support her life in the wild, or in this case, in specialized sanctuary care. Willow's transition proved equally successful, the deer quickly adapting to her expanded territory and, most remarkably, demonstrating clear recognition behavior when she caught glimpses of Luna through the specialized viewports separating their habitats. She's actively seeking visual contact, Sophia observed with professional excitement. Look how she positions herself to maintain line of sight when Luna moves along the connecting boundary. The final phase of the transition plan called for controlled opening of one connecting passage between the habitats, allowing the animals to choose whether and how to interact while maintaining separate secure areas where each could retreat if needed. This critical step was scheduled for Maya's final week at Wildridge, creating both professional symmetry and personal poignancy to the culmination of her work with Luna. 3 days before the scheduled connection, however, an unexpected emergency threatened to disrupt the carefully structured plan. James, who had returned to Colorado after his brief visit, called with urgent news that required Maya's immediate return. The State Wildlife Commission is reviewing critical funding allocations next week, he explained, his voice tense over the sanctuary speakerphone during an emergency team meeting. Tom is dealing with a family medical emergency and can't present our case. Without strong representation, we could lose 30% of our operating budget for the next fiscal year. The implications were immediate and serious. The Colorado Rehabilitation Center served hundreds of animals annually, with ripple effects throughout the state's wildlife management system. Maya's expertise and established relationships with the commission made her the logical choice to present their case. But doing so would require her to leave Wildridge immediately, missing the final phase of Luna's transition. "You have to go," Dr. Chen said simply, after they had reviewed all possible alternatives. "The work in Colorado is too important to jeopardize, and we can manage the transition here." Logically, Maya knew this was correct. The habitat connection could proceed under the team's capable supervision, with Maya returning afterward to complete her research documentation. Luna had developed strong relationships with multiple caregivers, no longer dependent solely on Maya's presence for security or comfort. Yet as she packed for the emergency trip to Colorado, Maya found herself plagued by an irrational sense of impending loss, as if her temporary departure might somehow sever the connection she had built with Luna over their months together. "I'll be back in 5 days," she told the Bobcat during their final interaction before her departure. "The team will take excellent care of you and Willow while I'm gone." Luna watched her with those intelligent golden eyes that seemed to understand far more than her species should comprehend, offering her distinctive chirp in response to Maya's words. The sound followed Maya as she reluctantly turned away, the Bobcat's gaze tracking her until she disappeared from view. The Colorado presentation consumed Maya's complete attention for the next 4 days, Intensive preparation, followed by a marathon commission hearing, where she successfully defended the rehabilitation center's funding requirements. Only after securing the necessary allocations did she allow herself to check messages from Wildridge, finding a series of updates from the team about Luna and Willow's progress. Habitat connection proceeding on schedule, read Dr. Chen's most recent message. Remarkable interaction patterns emerging. Video documentation waiting for your review upon return. Maya's flight back to Montana was delayed by spring storms, adding another full day to her absence from Wildridge. By the time she finally arrived at the sanctuary, she had been gone nearly a week, the longest separation from Luna since their journey from Colorado began. The team greeted her with barely contained excitement, their professional composure strained by whatever developments had occurred during her absence. "You need to see this immediately," Dr. Chen insisted, bypassing normal arrival protocols to lead Maya directly to the observation station overlooking the connected habitats. "They've established a routine that none of our models predicted." The scene that greeted Maya through the observation windows defied everything she thought she understood about Luna's already unprecedented behavioral patterns. The bobcat and deer were engaged in what could only be described as collaborative territory maintenance, moving together through the connected space with Luna leading, Willow following closely behind, periodically stopping to engage in mutual grooming behaviors that crossed every natural boundary between their species. "They've been doing this every morning and evening," Sophia explained, her voice hushed with continued amazement, despite having observed the behavior for several days. "Luna initiates, Willow follows. They're functioning like a bonded pair from the same species, not natural predator and prey." Maya watched in professional awe and personal wonder as the animals continued their synchronized movement through the habitat. Though she had documented countless extraordinary behaviors during her months with Luna, this level of interspecies coordination represented something entirely new. Evolutionary boundaries not simply crossed, but fundamentally dissolved. "They sensed you've returned," Raj noted quietly, pointing to Luna's suddenly altered movement pattern. The bobcat had stopped abruptly, her head raised and turned directly toward the observation area where Maya stood watching. "Her behavior changed the moment you entered the building." Before Maya could respond, Luna was moving with purposeful speed toward the habitat section nearest the human observation area, Willow following close behind. The bobcat reached the viewing panel and rose onto her hind legs, front paws pressed against the transparent barrier as she stared directly at Maya with unmistakable recognition. Then came the sound that broke something open inside Maya's carefully maintained professional composure, Luna's distinctive greeting chirp, but transformed into something more complex, more emotional than any vocalization she had previously documented. It was followed by another, and another, the bobcat's entire body vibrating with the intensity of her response to Maya's return. "She's crying for you," Sophia whispered, her own eyes filling with tears at the naked emotion in the bobcat's calls. "I've never heard anything like this from her before." The sound penetrated every layer of scientific objectivity Maya had constructed over her years of wildlife work, connecting directly to something primal and unguarded in her own heart. Without conscious decision, she found herself responding in kind, tears streaming down her face as she pressed her palm against the viewing panel opposite Luna's paws. In that moment of raw connection across the barriers of species, science, and circumstance, Maya finally acknowledged the truth she had been circling for months. Some bonds transcended conventional understanding, not just Luna's extraordinary relationship with Willow, but Maya's own connection to the remarkable bobcat who had transformed her understanding of what was possible between different species. Dr. Chen's hand on her shoulder eventually brought Maya back to awareness of the team gathered around her, witnessing this emotional reunion with professional interest, overlaid with personal compassion. "I think," Dr. Chen said gently. "We need to discuss your permanent position here at Wildridge."